Sounder, Chapter 1, Part 2. When the boy awoke in the morning, he went to the window. He remembered his dream of the flood covering the stock land. He called the younger children. He breathed steam up the window pane. He wiped the steam away with the bottom of his fist. His dream had not come true. There was no flood water rising in the bottom of the land. The bottom land. Sorry. Except for the frost on the ground, everything looked just the same as it had yesterday. And the younger children looked, saw nothing, and asked, "What is it?" The big blue enameled possum kettle was boiling on top of a chunk stove. It had 2 lids and a double for cooking and heating. The boy felt the brown paper bag of walnut kernels on the shelf behind the stove. "Yes," he said to his mother, "I think there are 2 pounds." He stood close to the warm stovepipe, turning one cheek and then the other to its glowing warmth. He circled his arms in a wide embrace around the pipe and rubbed his hands together. The warmth ran up his sleeves and down over his ribs inside his shirt and soaked inward through his whole body. He pulled in deep breaths from above the stove to catch the steam escaping from under the kettle's lid as it bounced up and down, breaking the rhythm of the bubbles that went lob, lob, lob on the surface of the fast-boiling pot. In a skillet on the second stove lid, there were pork sausages. He sniffed the thin lines of smoke curling up from under the edges of each of them. Pork sausage was for Christmas, but he knew it wasn't Christmas yet. His mother put a pan of cold biscuits on the lid of the possum kettle to warm. She was humming to herself. The lid stopped jumping up and down, and the steam began to whistle softly as it squeezed from under the lid. The smell that came from under the lid wasn't possum. It was ham bone. The boy had only smelled it twice in his life. Once before in his own cabin, and once when he was walking past the big house down the road. The sausage and ham bone smells filled up the cabin and leaked out through the cracks on the floor and around the door. They excited Sounder, and now he was scratching at the door. Sounder hadn't had much to eat yesterday. Besides a few scraps, he had had 1 cold biscuit. When flour was scarce, the boy's mother would wrap the leftover biscuits in a clean flour sack and put them away for the next meal. Then they would be put in a pan and sprinkled with a little water to keep them soft and warmed over. The boy called to Sounder to stop and go away. His mother stopped her humming and said, "Shush, child, you'll wake your father." And she went back to her humming. His mother always hummed when she was worried. When she had a well child on her lap and rocked back and forth, she sang. But when she held a sick child in her arms and the rocker moved just enough to squeak a little, she would hum. Sometimes she hummed so softly that the child heard the deep concerned breathing of Tara above the sound of the humming. The boy always thought her lips looked as though they were glued together when she hummed. They seemed to be rolled inward and drawn long and thin. Once when she kissed him goodnight, when he was sick, they were cold, he remembered. But when she sang and told stories, her lips were rolled out, big and warm and soft. Outside, the wind still blew. The sun was weak, and the earth was gray. Several times the boy went out to bring wood for his mother. He ate sausage and biscuits at the tin-top table with the other children. When his father got up, he chopped some wood and sat by the fire. The top of the possum kettle bounced up and down again because the biscuit pan had been moved. The father lifted the lid now and then. With the big wire fork that had a wooden handle, he pulled the ham half out of the water and turned it over. The boy felt warm and proud inside when his father's great hand took hold of the handle of the hot lid without using the pot rag the way his mother always did. Finally, his father took from the shelf a flat oak slab bigger than any of the pans or dishes and put it on the table. The boy liked the smell of the oak slab. It smelled like the Mercy Seat Meeting House picnic held every summer. He also liked to rub his fingers on the edge of the slab, for it was soft and smooth where the grease had soaked in. His father had hauled it out during long winter evenings as he sat by the stove. The boy had cleaned up the shavings and slipped them under the door of the stove when the draft was open. They burned with a bright flame, and they made a great mystery for the boys. The curled ones straightened out as they burned, but the straight ones curled up. The boy remembered when the oak slab had ham on it before. One year his father had won a pig in a shooting match and raised it to a hog. They had eaten one ham and traded one for beans and flour at the store. Yet that year they had spare ribs and chitlins and pan scrapple. Sometimes when the boy's father helped butcher hogs down at the big house, he would bring home spare ribs and sow bellies, and lots of sow belly, but not much spare rib. The boy's father took the ham from the kettle and put it on the oak slab. "Save the ham boiling for Sounder," he reminded the boy's mother. "Sounder will eat good now," the boy said. Yep, this page. The father sharpened the butcher knife with a whetstone. He used to whet his skith and his gooseneck briar hook in the summer when he would cut brambles and young sumac in the fencer rows. He cut big pieces of ham and they stuck out from under the brown tops of the biscuits. It was like a Christmas bigger than a pork sausage Christmas. The boy slipped a piece of that fat rind into the biscuit and took it out to Sounder. When the ham boiling had cooled, he filled Sounder's pan and ran his fingers up and down the great dog's back as he lapped it up. The windows of the cabin stayed steamed up almost all day. The kettle had boiled so long. The cold wind continued to blow outside. Nothing moved except what the wind moved. Dead leaves under the cabin, brown blades and stalks from the fields which were dead and ready to be blown away, bare branches of poplars, and the spires of tall pines. Toward evening, the father wiped the steam away from the glass and looked out a couple of times. The dry cottonwood chunks burned like gunpowder in the stove. One or two spots on the side of the stove gave off a red glow. With the flavor of the ham, the biscuits still in his mouth, the boy felt good. He watched his mother as she patched his father's overalls with a piece of ticking. The combination of faded blue overall cloth and the gray and white striped ticking looked odd. At one time at the Meeting House picnic, boys with patches the same color as their overalls had laughed at him and pointed to their checkered gingham on the knees of his overall. He had felt mad and hurt, but his mother had said, "Pay no mind, child," and had led him away. He hoped no one would laugh at his father. His father wouldn't be hurt. He didn't get hurt. He would get mad and fight back. The boy was always afraid when his father got mad. When the woman had patched the torn place, she got the walnut basket, folded her apron in her lap, and began to pick out the golden brown kernels. The boy thought she would sing, but the rocker only moved enough to squeak. She hummed softly, and her lips looked glued together. Look down that lonesome road." The boy wished she would stop humming and tell her a story about the Lord or King David, but she kept humming that lonesome road. The boy decided it was lonesomer in bed in dark than it was standing up. He was glad he could sit a long time after the young children had gone to bed. Once he had been gathering weeds which his father had cut at the edge of the lawn. On the lawns, a lady sat under a tree reading a story aloud to some children. He wished his mother or father could read. If they had a book, he would hold the lamp by their chair so that they could see the words and never get tired. "One day I will learn to read," he said to himself. "I would have a book with stories in it. Then he wouldn't be lonesome, even if his mother didn't sing."